Here we have verse 23 of the 7th chapter, Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is remarking on those who will have done things, sometimes remarkable things, in his name, working, as it were, on his behalf in various kinds of institutions that bear the name of Jesus, and yet pointing out that in spite of that particular pedigree, they nevertheless went through all of this without ever actually knowing him, no complete and authentic knowledge of Christ, just working on his behalf. We can think, of course, maybe the most conspicuous example in the New Testament would be Judas, who by all measures went out and preached and performed miracles and did all sorts of things with the authority that he received from Christ, and yet never really had a heartfelt connection to him, and eventually, of course, betrayed him. Other examples in history would be easy to produce, but the point is that it's one thing to be working in the name of Jesus, and it's quite another thing to actually be personally connected to him, and that's what Jesus drives home here. So we have Kai, the connective tota, indeclinable adverb, and then homologesoi. This is the word that means to confess. Homo, same, logeso from logao, which means to speak, to say the same thing, a confession. Here, the idea is a public confession, sometimes rendered a profession, but the point is Jesus now declaring. Autois, this is the indirect object, the dative masculine plural. Then I will confess, Jesus says, first person singular, future active indicative, to them. Hoti, which introduces as it were, a direct quote, udapota. This is another indeclinable adverb. You can see the uda represents a kind of negation, and pota having to do with when. Taken together, it is normally rendered as never. Egnon, this is from genosko. Of course, it forms its aorist in a irregular way. This is the first person singular aorist active indicative. So I will confess to them, never I knew would be the idea, first person singular. Never I knew. Direct object humas, I never knew you, in spite of the credentials and pedigree that they produced. No personal knowledge of Christ. And then this rather sobering command, apokoreta. Koreo means to go. It's one of the less frequent words in the New Testament for that. Apo, from, so go from. This is the second person plural, present active imperative. So go from me, or depart. Repeating the prefix here, depart from, emu. Emphatic here, depart from me. It's first person genitive singular pronoun, so depart from me, and then the ones who are to depart, the subject of this imperative, ho ergozomenoi, from ergozomai, deponent verb, means to work. This is a participle, of course. It's in the nominative plural, forming its expression here in the middle voice, so depart from me, the workers. Usually rendered you workers, but of course it's the you isn't there, it's just the subject of this. So you depart from me, you workers, tain anomion, of lawlessness. Sometimes rendered wickedness, but actually the word lawlessness is being used here. Anomos, anomia, lawlessness. Jesus has been emphasizing all the way through the Sermon on the Mount that while he'll correct certain views of the law that have come down in the tradition, he nevertheless also insists that his purpose is to bring to perfect expression the demands of the law, that's what he is about. And so it's not surprising that he would identify at this point those who are acting on his behalf without the right disposition toward him to actually, in spite of the evidence of their external works, nevertheless be engaged in works of lawlessness.